was to authenticate physically a warm body entering the system to be able to deal with that. So the issues relating to fraud and to the review or evaluation of these business processes is to be able to pick up any elements of vulnerabilities by counter-corruption and security. So they had achieved that target, and also the next target in relation to Q3, which is now the business process that was reviewed also around the issues of late birth registration, because it's one of the huge components where people actually do misrepresentation. Then the next slide, it's also under counter-corruption. There was just reported cases of fraud and corruption that needed to be finalized within 90 days. So they able to overachieve on those particular quarters. I'm going to move there. And then the next one was also on the threat and risk assessments that needed to be conducted in line with the minimum information security and standards, and also the minimum physical security. So in the second quarter, they were supposed to have done 9 of those threat and risk assessments, but unfortunately, due to the disaster regulation and lockdown, they could not deal with that particular target. So they redirected their resources in the third and fourth quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, obviously, there was overachievement in terms of the target, because they were able to mobilize more forces on the ground to be able to conduct that particular threat and risk assessment. And then the next one was around the vetting files. I'll pass that. This is quite important for the purposes of ensuring that all people in the systems are affected. Then the next program, Chairperson, is program 2, which is civic services. This is one program where we were, again, during the different level lockdowns, we were affected severely, having to reduce and increase our number of services based on the demand, but also looking at the issue of social distancing, ensuring that we do not become a super spreader. In the birth target, Chairperson was revised when we started the financial year. With the APP that was before we revised it, the target was 810,000, but we have had to revise to 750,000 births registered within 30 working days. In Q2, obviously, they were expected to register 207,928. They only achieved 197,606. And then in Q3 also was 194, and they only achieved 189,000. Obviously, the explanation relates to a number of reasons. For an example, we had to reduce going to health facilities because obviously the management of the health facilities did not allow officials to have access to those premises due to issues relating to COVID. So the footprint reduced during that particular period. But also at the level of provinces and head office, we had to reduce the staff in terms of attendance during Q2 and Q3. So that's basically what transpired with this target. I must say that, in Q4, Chairperson, we would like to, as a team, to thank the DG, because we started a daily monitoring of birth registration, where we would meet every day at 7 in the morning with all the provincial managers to push this, go on the ground ourselves as management to look at the facilities that needs to be connected and things like that. So we really pushed towards at the end, and then the target ended up being achieved annually, but we'll report it when we come back with the annual report. And then obviously there were corrective measures that were put in place, which I think they delivered. I'll move to the next one, which was on the number of smart cards. Again, Chairperson, the target under smart cards was dependent on the stipulations in the regulations, because there was a time where, for an example, smart card were only issued to school learners because of dealing with the issues relating to capacity. But I'm happy to indicate that in terms of the target that was set, this particular target for civics was achieved in terms of the smart cards on both the Q2 and Q3. And then, Chairperson, if I were to move to the next one, was around the machine-readable passports for adults, which we increased the period under level 3 to 42 working days, and level 3 to 32, and level 1 to 13 working days. But during Q2, the target was not achieved. We only managed to achieve it in Q3 because 100% of officials were requested to return to work in order to ensure that we deal with the issues of service, and also we deal with monitoring of staff at the back office and at a passport dispatch center, which is located at GPW. And also we had a regular interaction with key stakeholders, including GPW and Skynet, who are distributors of this document. So we also state the reasons for non-achievement and also what we did as corrective measures. So I will then not go into those details. And then the next one, Chairperson, was the draft marriage policy, which needed to be gazetted for public comment. In Q2, we presented the draft marriage policy to EXCO, and it was approved for submission to the Ministers' Management Meeting for Ministers' consideration. And then in Q3, we needed to do the what we call CS, which is needed to be approved by the level of Department of Performance and Monitoring, and also submit to different clusters the marriage policy. I think the year 2021, 2022 was really a year in which we had a lot of policy development, and we will continue to do so also in the current financial year to ensure completion of those. So in Q3, the target was not achieved because the minister had directed us that we need to do further consultation on the policy. As you know, even after it has been cleared by cabinet for public comments, a number of issues that seem to be controversial are being raised. But obviously, as government, we have a responsibility to put everything that has been sent to us by the members of the public as issues that are for consideration, because this directly impacts on them. So it's going to be a very interesting roller coaster year when it comes to the issue of the marriage policy. And then the next target was the draft citizenship and civil registration discussion paper. We achieved that particular target. We are actually doing a review on those two areas to ensure that we improve. I think part of the issues, Chair and members, is that obvious as things evolve and globally, we ought to ensure that our policy responds to current issues. Hence, this discussion paper that the minister instructed us to look into to ensure that our policies are in sync with developments globally. So where we are is that in the 2 quarters, we did achieve the discussion, the submission of the paper to the minister for consideration. And then the program 3 is immigration affairs. Chairperson, the first one related to the law enforcement operations conducted to ensure compliance with immigration and departmental legislation. They were supposed to have done 60. They did 107 during Q2. I think the reason for what we call for overachievement is that there were a lot of inspections and operations that were conducted in Pretoria upon the relaxation of state of disaster. And also being part and parcel of the likes of Fukai Mulao in Gauteng and other operations. But this is one area, Chairperson, and I think part of what the DHA bill will be able to do, because our law enforcement operations requires that our officials work even outside the normal working hours. So the conditions of service, therefore, must be favorable to such, because the current, Public Service Act is not favorable to such, and it makes it difficult even for a department. From budgetary point of view, from conditions of service point of view, to be able to deal with these particular issues. This is one else area also that impacts on permanent residence permit in line with those that are applied for marriage purpose or under marriage grounds. And then the next one target was just missed with one operation that needed to be done. There were 59 operations that were done. So that during this quarter, there were 59 businesses that were inspected, comprising of hotels, lodges, manufacturing. Unfortunately, they missed by a single target, and I think from the management side, they regard it as an oversight on that. Then there's a way forward. I think they put corrective measures, so we'll report on that when we do the fourth and the annual report. And then chairperson, this is another target that was not achieved on the permanent residents. Chairperson, the permanent residents needs to be adjudicated within 8 months in order for us to ensure that we've done proper due diligence in this regard. So due to a lockdown, the permitting functions were suspended. So the permitting could not be processed remotely, so that particular activity stopped. So that is why these colleagues could not achieve the target on permanent residents. And then this one relating to the 82% of critical skills visas adjudicated within 4 weeks. Again, there were no applications during Q2 because the centers where we collect the visas, where the clients applied for visas, were not operational. Also say that applies also in Q3. So, but they were in Q3, we prepared for the opening of the certain categories of visas, and then we started to have, population to be able to deal with insofar as this particular target is concerned. And then the other one was related to 90% of business and general work visas adjudicated within 8 weeks. Again, in Q2, there were no applications, but when we opened then in Q3, when Q3 opened in October, then we were able to have population to deal with, and that particular target was then achieved insofar as business and general work visas. And then this is a refugee protection policy discussion paper. This is another concept paper that we needed to deal with. This target was achieved in both quarters. And then the next one was the international migration policy discussion paper. Again, the target was achieved in the 2 quarters. And then the next target deals with the PMA incremental rollout and 4 ports of entry and 5 segments of borderline, which were identified, and 1 community crossing point at Sidila Mulom. So I think the first issue that we needed to do was the approval of key management position for the PMA, which needed to be approved by the Minister for Advertisement. But at that particular time, there was issues relating to the proclamation that needed to be finalized in order for management structure to be set up, and that only happened in December. And then also the third quarter was around rollout again into 2 ports of entry and 2 borderline segments. Again, the PMA had to come into force first before the establishment and the rollout. So that was impacted. So that's why the target was not achieved. And then this one was achieved on the National Targeting Center. The PMA Project Office obviously led this particular project on the National Targeting Center, which will be a part and parcel of the PMA once fully established. Chairperson, if you just do an analysis of reasons for not achieving target, obviously, I think no one will shy away from the issue relating to lockdown, which remained a challenge, and that the department resumed the provision of some of the services towards the second quarter. Services that were completely unavailable during the second quarter include the issue of business visas, general work visas, and critical skills visas. Services that became available towards the end of the second quarter also include the applications for IDs, so that ramped up the performance and applications of all types of passports. Access to health facilities continued to be a challenge. This negatively impacted our bed registration in hospitals. For example, in one facility in Umlazi in Durban at Prince Mshieni, we had to not go to the maternity wards, but they allowed the mothers to actually come out of the wards to do registration in our office, which is located next to the maternity ward. So there's some of the issues that were there. And then in order to observe a social distancing, also the department and GPW operated on a very low staff. Also, there were a few issues relating to IT-related matters. In August, we just had an issue regarding the servers that were not replicating certain applications. So, but that matter was attended to. And also the passport dispatch system and some times had some challenges. I'm not sure whether honorable members were able to visit the dispatch center and GPW during the site visit last week, so that you can be able to have a sense that when obvious documents come out of GPW to a passport dispatch center, so there's a Skynet system that is utilized for us to be able to dispatch those particular passports. And then also the restriction on international travel impacted on the rollout of our e-visa, and that the department had to also observe COVID-19 health and safety requirements where staff were returning to work on a rotational basis. Yesterday, I took the DG and some of the colleagues to the contact center just to be able to demonstrate that there are not, we don't have full bums on seats, we have a few individuals because we are rotating the staff in the contact center. So sometimes some of the impact around the access to the contact center is as a result of trying to ensure that we utilize staff on a rotational basis, but we're looking at ramping up at least to 80% now in order to be able to service citizens. Front offices, as we said, they did not operate 100%, and then the reduction, and then the non-sitting of certain clusters. And also, as I've said, that I think the minister requested that we further consult, because the complications of the policy, the marriage policy dynamics are quite huge. So there's still going to be a lot of that we have to deal with. And then we talked about the finalization of the proclamation for the commencement of the BMA, which was signed in December 2020. Chairperson, with that, I'd like to hand over to the CFO to deal with the budget as of Q2 and Q3, and then we'll then conclude our presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mavuso. CFO.
Chairperson, good morning, and Honourable Minister and the Honourable Members, good morning to you all. Chairperson, this presentation deals with Q2 and Q3, as Mr. Mavuso has already set out. Chairperson, Q2, we were in the grips of COVID. Slide 46, Chairperson, I'll spend some time on this and then compare it to the third quarter. Chairperson, if you see from this slide, the percentage spent at the end of September was 45%. If you do a linear projection, we should have been at 50%. The current budget at that point in time was still 9.029 billion rands, Chairperson. That budget was cut in the third quarter by 562 million, and in the last quarter we had another cut of 301 million, Chairperson. We have made those presentations already. Chairperson, on the earmarked funds, the transfers to the Electoral Commission and the Represented Political Parties Fund, at that point in time we transferred 50% as per the cash drawings. The last thing I want to emphasize on this particular slide, Chair, is under self-financing at the bottom of the slide. You will see that there's expenditure to the value of nearly 99 million rands. Chairperson, that was still against no budget because we only get our allocation for self-financing in the last quarter. Chairperson, the spending on self-financing is also important because our ability to spend on self-financing is limited to our ability to collect the revenue. So we must first collect the money and then we can spend. Chairperson, if we can ask that we move to the next slide. This presents the same information as the previous slide, Chair. Again, the percentage spent is 45%. Chairperson, you will now notice that there's a difference under citizen affairs. It's now 5 million because at program level, for this year under review, the transfer payments to the IEC and represented political parties still form part of the civics budget. We have now stripped out the IEC and represented political parties funding from Citizen Affairs, Chair, and we have created a new program called Program 4 so that we can better compare Citizen Affairs and Immigration Affairs. Chair, if you just look at this budget, it looks as though Citizen Affairs has a lot of money, but half of that is at least for the IEC. Chairperson, the next slide is then slide 48, deals with the same information but per economic classification. At this point in time, at the end of September, compensation of employees was spent at 44%. Goods and services were rather low at 59.6%. The departmental agencies and accounts, the transfers to the IEC and Represented Political Parties Fund, that was at 50% as per the drawdowns. Then there's a high expenditure on households, 210%, Chairperson. The outcome, the final outcome for the year under review was we came close to 25 million rand spent on households, Chair. So clearly we need to fix our budget allocations for households. Chairperson, at this point in time, we also spent most of our money on buildings and fixed structures, and machinery and equipment was still low. Chairperson, if I can then ask that we move to the next slide, slide 49, just gives an indication of the spending per province. Chairperson, at this point in time, you'll notice that none of the provinces were under pressure. They were all below, significantly below, under 50%. Chairperson, this is related to the impact of COVID during those times, but we were also trying to minimize expenditure and focus on the key issues, such as procuring of PPEs and cleaning services and that kind of thing. Chairperson, the last slide for the second quarter is the slide on revenue, which is the next one, please, Mr. Mavuso. Chairperson, at that point in time, we collected 53 mil or 54 mil in revenue because of the COVID pandemic, Chairperson. Our service offerings were limited. The revenue generating activities is mostly the sale of passports and IDs. Chairperson, now if those numbers go down, then your revenue collection would also go down. Chairperson, this figure of 53 or 54 million does not include foreign revenue. So that will come in at the last quarter. Chairperson, if I can then move to the third quarter as at the end of December. Chairperson, it's the same format as the previous quarter, so I'm just going to spend some time again on the percentage spent. It's 72% spent, Chair, but you will notice now that the current budget is 8.467 billion, 8.467 billion, Chairperson. So if you take the 9 billion for the quarter two, and you minus 561 million, you'll get 846, which is that was the first budget cut through this special adjustment budget, Chairperson. Chairperson, the next item I would like to highlight is then that the percentage spent for the IEC and the represented political parties again was on track as per the drawdowns. On self-financing, at this point, we also increased our expenditure from the 99 million in quarter two to close to 267 million, Chairperson. Chairperson, so the self-financing is based on the revenue collection, as I explained earlier. Chairperson, the next slide is just then the same information under per economic classification. And again, Chairperson, here you'll see some cuts. The 5 billion that we saw earlier for citizen affairs is now slightly less because of the impact of that 561 million cut. Overall, Chairperson, the spending was still at 72% spent. We were still safe. Chairperson, the next one is then just the economic classification. For quarter three, we're supposed to be at 75%, so we were slightly under. Goods and services has increased by now to 81, 82%. Households, Chairperson, you'll see have now grown from the earlier 9 mil to 16, nearly 17 mil. And the increase there is now 369%. The same with buildings and fixed structures, Chair. So we started to exceed the budget allocation, but we corrected that in the fourth quarter, so it was not too much of a concern. And then machinery equipment, Chairperson, was still low, and software and intangibles were still low at the end of December. Chairperson, the next slide then just gives the breakdown. So in the normal format, which we usually present to the committee, this is now per sub-program. It gives you the budget for the ministry, for the DG's office, for counter-corruption, for office accommodation, the transversal projects, with an indication as to the spend. Chairperson, I'm not going to get into the detail of this, but that's the normal format in which we present the information to the portfolio committee. It's per sub-program level. It gives you, if you want to know how much the minister spent, the minister's budget was 15 mil. At that point, the expenditure was 8.9 million, 57% spent, still 6.6 million rands left at the end of December. If I can ask that we move to the next slide, Chair, so I'm not going to go into the details of these two, the next four slides, Chair. So this is, again, citizen affairs with the Electoral Commission, the 2.18 there, represented political parties, that makes up huge parts of that budget. Under identification services, Chairperson, that's where we pay under status services, that's where we pay for the passports and IDs, which are printed at GPW. You'll see there that status services self-financing, there's expenditure of 209 mil. So that's directly linked to passports and ID printing at GPW. Chairperson, so that was the expenditure, but we also had to show you that we collect the revenue. Chairperson, the next slide just deals with the provinces again. Again, at this point in time, none of the provinces were under pressure. The linear projection is 75%. So expenditure did start to pick up during the third quarter, but not significantly. Chairperson, the last one is just immigration services. They were the closest to the 75%. So Chairperson, there's spent. So I'm not going to get into the detail of this. Chairperson, I'm moving towards the end. The next one is just for the provinces again, Chair. So it's the same information as what we presented earlier, just for this quarter. It's for some of it is higher than the others. The finance and supply chain at this point was at 80%. We took over the management of the COVID fund, Chairperson, so that we spent against my budget or the finance budget, and that's the reason for the increase in that spending. The other provinces, Chairperson, were in line. The second last slide, Chair, is this one about fines and penalties. At the end of December, we collected 182 million rands, Chair. You'll remember that we have spent already 266. So we had to collect significantly more in the last quarter in order to get to the 621. Chairperson, I should also point out that on the revenue collections, we did cut our revenue projections for the financial year from 1.2 billion to 621 million. But that only came through in the last quarter, through the adjustments estimate. Chairperson, that is the presentation on the budget versus expenditure for those two quarters. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CFO, for the report. Mr. Mavuso, DG, are you done with your presentation?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. Thank you. We're done with the presentation. Thank you so much.
The DG? Is there
no additional comments? Thanks for now, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, DG and your team for this presentation. I think there's been highlighted that is a delayed report and some of the areas with identified progress, but I think to some extent there are still challenges that are arising from the. I will invite members to comment and raise questions on the areas that have been highlighted by both the DG, the DG and the DDG Mavuso and the CFO Kolambe. I'm going to start with the co-chair, Honorable Lizel, Honorable Molekwa, Honorable Mukini, Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Dito, Honorable Lukhwase, Honorable Ross, Veteran Lukota, and Honorable Pillay. And we'll run the interaction through DG delegation, delegated to his team. Then we'll invite also the Deputy Minister, and then we'll invite the Minister. So it's how we're going to frame our interaction, deliberation on this presentation. In that order, Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, our chairperson. I think I would like to start by saying thank you very much to the presenter for the presentation and to the Minister. And I think also we would like to welcome the new head of corruption. And I think at some stage, Chairperson, as we've been discussing as a committee, that maybe we could invite the new head of corruption to come to our committee to give us a presentation of the work of the anti-corruption unit, and maybe also share with us some of her plans that she's got for fighting corruption, fraud, and even dealing with some of the syndicates at the Department of Home Affairs. So, of course, you might not have time to do all of that today, but that we maybe in the next term do invite her to come and speak to us about some of those issues that are very important and obviously goes to the heart of our department and its functions and operations. Then with regard to the targets not achieved, of course, none of us wants to see a presentation where there are targets not achieved. But of course, one must consider the limitations such as the lockdown and the implication it had on the services of our department. However, for me, one of the issues, again, is on slide 12, where we speak about the refugee and asylum seeker management system, and then they speak about wanting to source a service provider. They wrote to CETA, and CETA turned them down, saying that they cannot go ahead to look for their own service provider. And again, this hold that CETA has over government departments, and in many instances, stifling their operations, and it's really worrying for me. And also, I would maybe want to know why CETA said in the letter that they wrote back to you that you could not go ahead and look for that service provider on your own. Maybe if you can just share some of the reasons they forwarded to you. On page, I think it was 34, when we speak about the immigration inspections. Now, you've got two stories there. On the one slide, we've overachieved the inspections, and on the other side, we've missed the inspections by one inspection. And it was said it was an oversight by management. But my fear with these inspections is, Chairperson, and I often speak about it, is that these inspections seem to be a tick box exercise. So on the one side, we say we overachieved. On the other side, we say we've missed it by one target. But the practical implication of these immigration inspections on the ground, maybe also my appeal would be at some point that we ask DDG McKay to come to us and say to us, well, with these 107 inspections, or the inspections where we overachieved, this is what we found. This is maybe, the situation we are seeing on the ground. This is how we're dealing with the issues of businesses employing undocumented or illegal migrants, because the picture on the ground is much different from what we're seeing in these presentations. People are saying to us in some sectors that some businesses are employing foreign nationals only, and the picture is not getting better. So my concern then becomes, it's fine for us to say we've overachieved the target, but if it's not making an impact for the people on the ground, then really it becomes a problem for me. So at one stage, we must also engage with the Immigration Inspectorate on some of these targets and what it is that they're actually doing or achieving, because it doesn't seem to be much. On the issue of the Border Management Authority and the rollout, again, the vacancies have not been filled in these 2 quarters. Of course, that is a cause for concern. And again, we should have a presentation, which we have all been asking for, on the budget, the rollout plan, and the filling of vacancies. Then my last 2 questions. On slide 50, when we speak about revenue collection, there's a mention of fines. Whether any of these fines were from the monies that you collected from airlines that are still owing you money. And I also wanted to get an indication with these 2 quarters, how much you have spent on legal costs, legal fees. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chairperson.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentations presented by the department as presented, Chairperson. I think we have noticed that most of the programs were not achieved by the department. And this is because of the COVID-19 pandemic interrupted these programs. But Chairperson, I just want to check with the department if there is any plan of action that has been put in place in order to fast track or to tackle the programs that were not achieved by the department. And I also would like to encourage that if the plan is there, we will also encourage the department to keep on updating the portfolio committee on the progress insofar as the plan of action is concerned. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Mleko, are you done? Okay. Honorable Mkwini?
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Mine, not a lot, actually. Firstly, let's welcome the head of anti-corruption unit, and hoping that she will do a good job, and also she will not be use that position to to victimize people. She will make sure that she does an investigation without fear or favor. We must not get reports here that there are people who are being harassed or victimized. So we'll be watching that unit very, very close, because we know the problem of corruption in the Department of Home Affairs. I've got probably about 2 comments on the presentation. One will be I've seen that on the expenditure, on the IT, or you can say the software, there was an underspending. I wanted to check that what was the reason there. Is it also because of like COVID-19? You know that the systems at the Home Affairs are always down. So I'm actually very concerned that, we are underspending there. Maybe the conditions have changed. The minister or DTG will probably just maybe take us, maybe update us. I saw there's a huge underspending there. So we need to spend that money so that the systems kept updated and ensure that the system are not down. For me, that is a huge, concern. I've raised it with the committee many times, that you've got people, the communities out there which go to Home Affairs, and then you find that systems are down. So let us ensure that that money is being spent, so that you don't have that, the crisis which is there, because that's a key performance indicator, I think, for Department of Home Affairs. Efficient service delivery. So that will put you onto the map. So we need to rethink, make sure that you put a lot of money and don't underspend on the systems. I believe that the systems can be updated. It's not a matter of, COVID-19, 19. Let us try now to get over this euphoria of we didn't achieve this because of COVID-19 and all of that. Yes, understand, because of the Q2 and 3, around that time it was COVID-19. But now we hope that as you are presenting further, there will be no underspending on that. And also on the issue of the Department of Home Affairs offices, I saw also there was an underspending on that. I think I did raise a question at some point, Harry, and I said, does the Home Affairs consider to put more satellite offices? Maybe have you done a site layout and check how many people are you serving in an area? Are you not too far from communities that you're seeking to serve? I saw there's a bit of underspending there. I don't know if the situation has changed now. Is there a plan to probably open more offices so that the service delivery is closer to the people. I know that in the Eastern Cape, in those rural areas, Butterworth and all of that, the Butterworth office is serving probably 20 or 30 rural areas there. You have people that are coming at 4 o'clock that are coming to there. So I wanted to check if that situation has changed now. And all that. So that's fine for me, Chair. That's just the thing is the contribution. Hope things have changed right now in terms of the plan, the performance, and also the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtini, for your contribution. Can I invite Honorable Kanyile?
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone. Chairperson, I think firstly, I'd like to bring forth the issue of the late submission of the presentation. The department needs to know that it is the biggest inconvenience to us because we spend most of the time on the road. And if we don't get this presentation on time, we don't have enough time to prepare. So we just hope that in future, they will send us the presentation 48 hours before the meeting starts. I know this is an issue that we have raised on numerous occasions, but we just hope that the department is going to address it. Thank you. Also, during the presentation, I have noticed that in quarter 3, the department has achieved 194,891 registrations of birth, which I believe that is commendable considering the circumstances the department is working under. The next question that I am having, Chairperson, there was somewhere the presenter spoke about the tenders that are delayed. The question that I have there is that how often did the bid adjudication committee meet in 2020, and how many of the 8 tenders they were meant to be processed, to have been processed that are delayed? Another question that I have, Chairperson, is with regard to the citizenship applications. We would like to know when is this service going to open, because in my understanding, this service has been closed since March 2020 when we had our first lockdown. And we have moved up until level 1, but this service was never opened. Now we are on level 2 again. But can the department just give us a direction on when this service is actually going to be open? Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kanyile, for your contribution. Honorable Tito.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to the members and also the Honorable, to the entire Chair.
Yeah, I can proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry, my network is not good. One question. My question is in our 100 mobile trucks that we have right now currently, can the department please indicate to us where they are, because of we only knew from last year where they were, and then is there any plans put in place for them to acquire more mobile trucks, or are we only going to move with 100 that we have currently right now? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Tito, for your contributions and questions. Honorable Khwase.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me start by welcoming the presentation made by the department and note the presentations. And also welcome the new head of the anti-corruption unit and say to her that we're looking forward to having a good relationship and working relationship with her in making Home Affairs a corrupt-free department. Chair, honestly, Honorable Lizel and Honorable Asnat Molekwa covered me. So I will not have anything much to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Honorable Khwase. Honorable Rose.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Minister, DG and CFO for the presentation. Allow me also to welcome the appointment of Advocate Moitzi. As a former head of organized crime at SAPS, she's the perfect appointment for Home Affairs. CFO, in terms of the households, you mentioned it yourself, but there seems to be a matter that doesn't get resolved. And you say that the budget allocation needs to be fixed. But from what I remember from our previous discussion last year, we were talking about the fact that this was leave accrual and things like that for people that leave. Are there not measures that can be taken to limit the amount of leave that is accrued? Or is this just accrued indefinitely? And is this total risk assessed? Or you know, the total risk, is it assessed so that we know what the total risk is in a specific year when we allocate this amount? And where is the budget taken from when we exceed this budget, which seems to happen all the time? Where does it come from? And then finally, in terms of the access model, does this access model include birth registrations at health facilities? So has this been taken into account where they might not exist yet, but where they need to go? And then, you know, we say something about consulting the provinces, but are we going to consult the people, the general public, about this access model? Because these access models are developed from GIS systems where you use data, you put it in, and you more or less work out some sort of catchments. But you might find that those catchments don't make sense on the ground. So will this process be going out for some sort of public input? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ross, for your contributions. Veteran recorder. Okay, Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And let me apologize for video this morning due to the inclement weathers. Chairperson, firstly, let me welcome and appreciate the report. And also to say that a lot of it is work in progress. But I think we must commend the department because apart from just Home Affairs and government as a whole, you know, we had to adapt to a new normal due to COVID-19. And in spite of the many challenges that one has experienced, it's obviously a lot of what we do will be by trial and error, trying to implement new initiatives, trying to implement alternative approaches to many things so that we can be able to still continue and provide a service. And for that, I think we must be able to commend them. Chairperson, mine is just one concern, and I think it's more one that we've raised many a times, and that is in regards to backlogs. If the department can work very swiftly to ensure that there is some kind of strategic plan around how we address backlogs, I think that's going to take us a long way because we don't want to pile up more and more backlogs while we are still trying to clear out previous backlogs. So I think it's important that we are focused and we have some strategic plan in how we're going to deal with that. But apart from that, I welcome and appreciate the report and I have no challenges with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Play, for your contributions and all members who interacted with the report. I think
Chairperson, you're having difficulty with your sound. Maybe you could turn off your video.
Hello, members. I'm just trying to call the acting chair now.
We once took a detailed report, and I think that decision. Uh, can we invite the DG to respond, and then with his team, and then we'll invite the DM and the minister. DG.
Thank you so much, Chair, and the members for the questions. And maybe perhaps let's start with the questions that Honorable van der Merwe has asked. I think with regards to the inspectorate team, we will definitely come back to the committee and share with the committee the analysis that you have requested for. But obviously it will be informed by one, the current capacity levels that we have in that team. It's not a lot of people. And it's an issue that we've raised within the security cluster. And Honorable van der Merwe, we have previously indicated that the entire security cluster is underfunded. We currently have only about 600 officials in that section, and therefore we currently rely on partnerships with the other law enforcement authorities, such as your JMPD in Joburg, in Pretoria, it will be the Tshwane Metro Police and the SAPS. It will take a bit of time to get to your desired impact because of the numbers that we currently have. And then the second one, we will definitely come back to this committee. I think Advocate Muitse has been with the department for quite some time, so she's not a new hand, and she's familiar with the issues that the department is faced with, Honorable Grini. So the presentation is almost ready. We will definitely come back to the committee and share with the committee the strategy that Honorable van der Merwe has spoken about. I think Mr. Mavuso will speak to the issues that you have raised around CETA. And then on the questions that Honorable Kanyile raised with regards, if I got it correct, because there was a breakage a bit, around the closure of the, the permanent residence permit. I think at the moment, Honorable Kanyile, the clients can still apply for other services such as your temporary permits. The permanent residence permits are linked to the disaster management regulations. And of course, the approach has been to take a risk-based approach with regards to opening up some of the services. And all those are approved by the NCCC, not only by the Department of Home Affairs. I think on the question that Honorable Pillay asked with regards to the backlogs, today on the 1st of June, there's a team that has started working on the backlogs, and we hope in the next month or so we would have dealt with quite a lot of the issues that Honorable Pillay has raised. Linked to that, we have set up a 4-member team, just 4 officials that are working on queries, either those that are coming from members of the public, those that are coming from members of parliament. So this team is reporting directly to the DG and the minister, just resolving, that's their job, to resolve all these queries within a period of 14 days, but in between, provide feedback to clients. I think Honorable Mgrini, with regards to more offices, obviously it depends on the economic outlook of the country. When the economic conditions improve, we will then look into some of the issues that we have raised. However, in the meantime, there's work that's going on around the offices. If you go to Taung, there's work that's going on for a new Home Affairs office, Mokopane in Limpopo, a new office, Toyando similarly, and we will be having interactions in your province in Matatiele tomorrow about relocating the current office to a better office that the municipality is providing to us. I think Honorable Tito, again, purchasing new trucks also depend on the economic outlook. However, I think the current ones that we have shared with Eddie the routes of all the trucks at the moment. We, however, can again share some of the routes so that members of parliament can at any point be able to know where we are. So I'll then leave some of the questions to the CFO and the DDG Mavuso Chair, starting with DDG Mavuso. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the last one will be Advocate, just an impression on the new work. Thank you, DG.
Thank you very much, honorable members. On the question, Honorable Funder, remember, this is the letter I'm referring to that was written to us on the 11th of May, where it was indicated that we had asked the department, as a department has asked to be exempted from the procurement process and be allowed to run the tender process through its own supply chain management. So the previous engagements were held with CETA executive caretaker, where this was not supported. So it continues to indicate. So I just want to indicate that this is the response that we had received from the CETA Chief Procurement Office in relation to us going on our own bid. So that's the one, Chairperson. Then the other question, the Honorable Moleko had asked around the plans. So during the 2 quarters, obviously, there were mitigation plans that were put in place in order to ramp up for those targets that have not been met in quarter 2 and quarter 3. And also to indicate that whatever that has not been achieved in the previous financial year, obviously, will go into the following financial year. Secondly, Chairperson, in 2013, we took a decision that we're not going to report on partially achieved targets. The indication, I think, should be clear that if certain targets have not been achieved, it does not indicate that there's no work that was done. The work has been done, but it has not been completed. Hence, we report it as not achieved. Previously, in other departments, they still report partially achieved. So I thought I must just mention that. Then the other issue Chair Honorable Mcini is raising is around the underspending in IT. It does not. Those underspending were not related to, for an example, a system development or paying for maintenance. In some instances, it's when we have not received invoices from some of the service providers for your software, for your particularly licenses. So the intangibles in most instances will refer to the licenses. And then I think DJ has spoken about the issue of additional offices. In terms of the study, we have the geographic access model study and also the DHA access model. So that is what we utilize because, Honorable Mcini, in the Eastern Cape, for an example, we use a lot of mobile units in that area. But I just want to emphasize one point that I think I've said before, that there are certain offices that are not utilized effectively. We have an office, for an example, in Zwelicha. That office was not being utilized because everybody goes to King Williamstown. In the same vein that I think in the next meeting, we probably have to share the statistics around performance of certain offices, that we modernize an office in Middledrift and that office is not being utilized effectively. So we do have some of these cases where people are not redirecting traffic in a particular way, where office is already there, the very same community is not taking it up. And then I think the issue of, I think Honorable Kanyile, we note we apologize for the late submission. I think we submitted late to the minister, so we apologize for that. And then around the issue of mobile trucks, I think Mr. Skama can deal with that, or DJ has actually dealt with that, but the question around the expansion, there was a plan this year to expand with 40 additional. But what we had said is that let's resolve the issue of connectivity in rural areas. Fortunately, we have now installed a VSAT satellite in one of the trucks, because what we want is that a truck must have redundancy. In other words, it must have 2 ways of connecting with the LTE router and also with the VSAT satellite, because the VSAT satellite is not limited by the physical infrastructure of towers and things like that, which are not movable, are static. But obviously with VSAT, the story is different because it's a satellite connectivity. But we just want to ensure that we have redundancy in these trucks so that at least if the other connectivity fails, and then we are able to deal with the other one. You tell us the second one. And then Honorable Ross, on the issue of the access model, yes, access model look at the entire footprint expansion of the department. What we did is we did an analysis with the minister in August 2019, where we identified that there's 1,445 health facilities in the country where there's birth occurrence. Now, and then we then divided them into 5 categories. The first 3 categories is actually account for 80% of beds in the country, and they're in the region of about 600, if I'm not mistaken. I'll check the numbers. And in that regard, we are now focusing on those 3 categories to ensure that we connect those. So that's part and parcel now of that footprint expansion. The issue of having bed registration facilities at the hospital is mainly made to ensure that the convenience, but also to ensure that the mother does not have to come to the office with a little baby after they've been discharged. So that's one of the issues. And then the other issue around the consultation with the public, this is not about public policy making when it comes to access model, but is looking at about the efficient resources, utilization of resources and deployment of resources by the department. Obviously, if you were to go to the members of the public, everybody will want to say home affairs in their street. So those are some of the issues, I think, that we're also dealing with constrained resources. It's like the question that is being raised around expansion of offices. The difficult part now that we currently have is that even with the banks partnership, you have an office in Durban that is ready in one of the banks, in that bank. But the problem is that we don't have the staff to send there, because currently until we had signed the partnership agreement and move out of the pilot, we still have to provide the personnel. But in the current arrangement, we're providing the personnel. But in the arrangement where they would have signed the agreement, they will provide the personnel. So it's a chicken and egg situation currently that we are faced with. But we thank members for the question. I hope we have been able to clarify some of the issues. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mavuso. Mr. Olambe.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chairperson, I'll start off with Honorable van der Merwe's first question. So on fines and penalties, the airlines did pay during the financial year that's just passed, the 2021 financial year, Chairperson, but it was very, very low in comparison to previous financial years. So the fines and penalties we collected in 2021 is 768,000 rands in comparison to nearly 25 million in the previous financial year. Chairperson, unfortunately, I do not have the legal costs as at the end of Q2 and Q3 readily available, and I will provide that to Honorable van der Merwe through the committee. The total for the year spent, Chairperson, is 38.5 million on legal costs for 2021, but I don't have the figures at the end of Q2 or Q3, so forgive me for that. Chairperson, then the questions on the expenditure for software as well as for office accommodation. Chairperson, so on buildings and other fixed structures, at the end of September, we were already sitting close to 93% spent. Buildings and fixed structures, Chairperson, we had problems because in the last quarter, we had to borrow money from other people to make sure we pay our DPW commitments. So we do not have excess funds under buildings and fixed structures, Chair. There was also a question about the software, Chairperson. So we usually pay our licenses in the last quarter. Chairperson, for this financial year, we also spend that full allocation under software and intangibles. I think it's 45 million, if I remember correctly. Chairperson, then there was a question as to how often does the BAC meet? The Home Affairs BAC meets every second week. So they meet on Wednesdays. Tomorrow they meet again, and then 2 weeks from there. Chairperson, that's in the departmental calendar. We have not missed a single meeting as far as I know. Chairperson, then just to answer Mr. Honorable Ruiz's questions, it's the leave liabilities are limited to the extent that you lose any leave credits which you haven't used at the end of a cycle. So those leave credits don't grow in that perspective. It's the capped leave that grows as people move on to progression with pay progression. So as if you had leave accumulated capped leave from 2010 and your salary, you get a promotion or a bonus or a notch increment, Chairperson, then that leave liability grows in that context. But normal leave, if you don't lose your leave, you lose it. So that's why a lot of people are now on leave currently. Chairperson, there was also a question on the households and whether that's risk assessed. Chairperson, the point I'm trying to make on households is that it's difficult to budget for it because branches must budget for it themselves. And because of the pressures, people prefer not to budget for the reality that some people may leave or retire or die, Chairperson. So that's what I said. We will then take money from either goods and services or compensation of employees, depending on where there's a saving, and then ask National Treasury for approval to do the environment to those items. So Chairperson, households is strictly speaking a COE sub item. So it's supposed to be in the same category as salaries, but for some other strange reason, it's linked, or it's classified under transfer payments and as households. Chairperson, so for the current financial year, our expenditure on households is just over 25 mil. As I indicated at our last interaction, Chairperson, that my intention is to allocate at least 25 million rands for households in the current financial year. We will take that money from goods and services, Chairperson, from everybody in the department to make sure that there's sufficient money, and we'll centralize that money rather than leave it in a branch to cater for that eventuality. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hollambe, for the response. I'm sure, Advocate Moise, you may not necessarily have many issues that you raised, but you may take interest on the comment made by members on the issue of the anti-corrupt. Perhaps if you have any comment, even though we're still waiting for the detailed report in terms of the issues that must come to the committee. What is the impression that has been made by members of the committee? Advocate.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Hello. Thank you, Honorable Member. I would like to take this opportunity to
you can proceed.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Minister, the DM, and honorable members for welcoming me. I look forward to working with the committee in a very cordial way and to bring my side. And the requested input will be ready, I think, in the third week of June, because indeed we have been working on the presentation. So it will definitely be ready in the third week of June, probably. But that I will discuss that through the Office of the DG and the Minister. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Advocate Moitzi, for that progress work. We'll await, once we schedule for the report to be presented in the committee, I'm sure it will be more ready. Can I invite the Deputy Minister, and then I will invite the Minister. Deputy Minister, if there's comment or issues raised by members. Thank you, DM.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I will request not to switch my video on. I'm in the rural today for better connectivity purposes. Let me firstly thank members of the committee for the commitment and support that they've really given us, and the understanding of the material conditions in which we operated in during the second and the third quarter in terms of a lockdown level. That is very important so that we understand what we're dealing with. My only comment is that, Chairperson, in as much as we did not make the targets for the second and third quarter, in as far as birth registration is concerned, as well as the issue of the collection of smart ID cards, but we eventually ramped up in the fourth quarter so that we could cover the backlog and as such, making sure that we achieve the annual target. I'm sure when we look at quarter four, when we come back for it for quarter four, and our annual performance will be able to display that we eventually caught up with the backlog that was supposed to deal with, eventually meeting the target that was set for the year. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DM, for the contributions. Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you. Let me start with the questions by the Honorable Lisel van der Merwe, because this is very important, about the inspections by the immigration officers, whether it is just a ticker box. It's not, it's much more of a gap in the legislative arsenal, because this is what's happening. Honorable van der Merwe, I too was not aware of it until the president appointed, if you remember, the immigration, IMC on immigration, which is chaired by myself and Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, Honorable Thulas Nxesi. We are chairing that committee. When I went to my first meeting, I was very eager about this issue of quotas, because the Honorable Minister of Finance, Minister Tito Mboweni, had also mentioned it. I think it's in one of the budget speeches, that in some of the sectors, he would like to see quotas whereby maybe 60% are nationals and 40% are foreign nationals. So I was very eager for that to be implemented, only to find that there's a legislative gap. There is no law, there's no act of parliament that actually provide for that. The only quota of 60-40, 60 in favor of nationals, is when a foreign company come to establish a factory in South Africa. They are required to bring only 40% of people from outside the country, but 60 must be nationals in the country. But for factories that are already based in South Africa, owned by South Africans, there is no law that compels them not to hire 100% foreign nationals. And this is where the gap is. It was more glaring in the trucking industry. You remember the laws that happened in the truck industry. In one of the inspections, I was very eager to find employers who will be caught and punished for deliberately ignoring South Africans and to hire foreign nationals. Not that I've got anything against foreign nationals, but we all know, as we're sitting here, that they are doing it for exploitation processes. They are doing it specifically to exploit them, not because they like them. And that is one of the most painful issues about this. And so I was very eager when they started doing inspections there, only to find the results are a very small yield, because these people are very wise. What they do, they know very well that they'll only be punished if they hire an undocumented migrant. But if they hire somebody who's documented, then the law doesn't stop them, even if they hire 100% of them. So because of that, we sat down with Minister Nxesi, and as I'm speaking, in the last IMC, which took place about 10 days ago, they were showing us a progress about this bill. We need to develop a bill which we must send to Parliament about quotas in various areas of life, you know, in various sectors, I mean to say. You are aware that this question is quoted many times in the hospitality industry. Even if you go there now, or my immigration officials go there, definitely they'll find 100% foreign nationals, but all of them will be documented, either as an asylum seeker or a refugee or somebody on a Section 23 permit, etc., etc. But hiring outright illegal migrants usually happens in agriculture, which in many cases is in the farms, which are very difficult to access, and it's very difficult to catch them there. The second question, which I would like to answer, is from Honorable Molegwa, but I think maybe it has already been answered, but just to finalize, remember that this report you are receiving about Q2 and Q3, things are no longer where they were. We are just reporting it because it's the procedure. We have got to report something that happened in June last year. But it doesn't mean that if we fail to achieve something in June last year, we have not corrected it now. Many of these things have been corrected. You may remember that when we went down to log level 5, we were not issuing birth certificates, but babies were being born. But immediately when the log levels started, when we went down to lower log levels, we actually put up programs to cover up so that all the children who were born during that time are actually registered. And as such, we don't have any backlog on death registration. But despite the fact that today here, we'll report to you that it was not achieved. Yes, it was not achieved at that time, but immediately when the log levels is down, we actually covered and corrected. So we don't necessarily have as many backlogs as this report here is showing. Now, the issue of citizenship and permanent residence, I think DG has answered that question. But I also want honorable members to understand our situation. And I know what I'm going to say might be very sensitive. We are in the middle of a pandemic all over the world. Every country is looking inwards on how to save its own citizens. Do you then go out and invite other people to come to your country for permanent residence, for citizenship? In other words, how far do you open that system out and say everybody must come now, we are an open country, when you are fighting this pandemic, which is so unpredictable? So many countries are inwards looking in, how do we fight this thing outside, inside the country, and how do we serve our nationals before we open up for everybody? Those are some of the considerations which must be taken, which must be taken seriously when we make these decisions. The issue of trucks, Honorable Tito, I agree with you 100%. I am dreaming to have more trucks because it's very easy, unlike offices, because as Mr. Mavuso has already said, sometimes we agree enthusiastically on putting up an office only to find that it's not utilized and it is there permanently, you can't change it. But with a truck, when you realize that coming here does not necessarily yield good results, then you can move the truck somewhere where it is needed. So I'm a very big fan of getting more trucks, but as it's already been said, it depends on the economy. The issue of access model, Honorable Ruos, is exactly the same thing. This is a scientific study rather than a public participation process. Not that we won't listen to members of the public, but Mr. Mavuso is right. If you go to members of the public to ask them about where you put offices, everyone will like an office on their own streets so that it becomes convenient for them. But for us, it's an issue. That's why we gave it to CSIR so that it becomes a scientific study. Where is the flow of people? Because there are times at which ordinarily I will say all the offices must go into the townships and rural areas. But then officials will tell me that no, but people want to come to town to do certain things and also attend to home affairs, because many people from rural areas would like to come to town for lots of services, not only home affairs services at the same time. That's why Mr. Mavuso here has just announced, I'm not sure whether it's Mr. Mavuso or DG, where we've put up a brand new office and only to find that nobody comes there, because we were assuming that these are poor people in a rural area. We put an office here, they'll use it, only to find that no, they don't. So we have to study the behavior of people, the patterns of economic development, the patterns of movement, what makes people move, the social interactions, etc. That is why the access model has to be done scientifically by the CSIR, but we'll also put in what we know as politicians about social interactions with people. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister and your team, for the responses that were carried, and members for your comments. As we have indicated, and I think we must indicate and apologize that were struggling with the network. Hence, members have requested to switch off their videos. We note that the crisis. So wanted to thank the presentation made and the issues raised by the committee. And just to recap on the issues that I think members have also raised as a process for that in the next report that will be waiting, will just follow up on the issues that were indeed raised in terms of the progress that have been made, the plans, and the areas that has to do with the backlog in terms of the sectors of your service work. The minister, there's a commitment. I think the advocate is now grounded work that the report on the issues that related to the decision of the committee will be ready at the time the committee is going to requesting for interaction. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for presenting this delayed report. We have noted progress, and we're happy that there's a huge progress in terms of the areas that members have been worried on, and also in terms of the financial areas that the department has prioritized to complement the programs as being outlined in your APP. Members, thanks very much. We're going to enter into another item, and we want to thank the minister, the deputy minister, the DG, and your team, Mr. Mavuso and the CFO and the advocate, and Mr. Sigama and all the team. We're going. Thank you very much. We're going to release you. Thanks, Minister, with your team.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Matonzi. Thank you, Mr. Matonzi.
Yes, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Matonzi.
Okay. I'm just trying to share the report quickly. Can you see the report, Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Chairperson and members, you will recall last year there was a letter from the president last year wherein we were supposed to approve the salaries of the IEC commissioners. So this year, on the 13th of April, we received a letter, and then it was referred to the committee so that we can approve the salaries of IEC commission. I won't go into detail, but I will just go right there at the okay. In fact, no, what the letter from the president is saying is that no, they recommend a zero increase for the salaries of the IEC chairperson, deputy, and the commissioners. So I've here done a draft report, and then I'll just read on the recommendation. The committee, having deliberated and concur with the president's determination on the remuneration adjusted of IEC commissioner, that a retrospective salary freeze or 0% increase be implemented for the chairperson and other full-time commissioners, given their salary level for the 2020-2021 financial year. For the part-time commissioners, similar freeze will apply to the daily hourly rate which they receive for 2020-21 over and above the salary freeze applicable to judges. The committee should recommend that the National Assembly approve the notice determining the salary, the remuneration of commissioners of the IEC. So that is basically the recommendation. The others is just background, is that the president is recommending a salary increase of 0 for all commissioners. That's all, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Matonzi.
We'll need to adopt the report. If there are changes, members, they can just let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Matonzi, for this update. I think there was a circulation of the draft report to all the members. Can I get an impression of members in terms of the process so that we're able to adopt?
I Chairperson?
Veteran and Pillay, Honorable Pillay. I'm informed that members are struggling with the network. Same here. They can't even. They are in attendance, but they can't hear the challenge that we're facing today. Co-chair, Honorable Lizelle.
No, Chairperson, my hand was not up. I think the Honourable Roos has got his hand up, but I'm happy to adopt the report as is. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Malekwa.
Thank you, Chairperson. I second Honorable Lizette.
Honorable Mkene.
No comment, Chair.
Honorable Kanyile.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm also happy to adopt the report as is. Thank you.
Honorable Khwase, thank you.
I second the adoption, Chair.
Honorable Tito.
Thank you, Chairperson. No comment. Thank you.
Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the report.
Honorable Pillay.
Chairperson, we support and adopt the report.
Thank you, members. I assume that Honorable Mkini and Honorable Tito abstaining from the approval of the budget. Sorry, the report. Yes. Thank you, members, for processing this item. Can I invite Honorable Mr. Matonsi? Oh, sorry.
Chairperson.
Veteran, sorry, veteran.
It seems to me
my apology, veteran.
I came a bit late, but I see. I think you have not been able to see me. However, I just wanted to support the report.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
No. Yes, apology, veteran. I have been calling everyone, so I did not. It was not deliberate on my part. It may perhaps the system that we're using, but
you did call
thanks
me.
For that,
yes.
Yes.
Thanks. I'm aware you did call me at some point.
Thanks, veteran. I wanted it to be on record so that I'm not being taken.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, Chair. Chairperson?
Yes, any announcement?
Oh, okay. Yeah. The only thing to say is that this, in terms of our committee program for the second term, today was our last meeting, and then members are going on recess from next week Monday. So the next meeting for the third quarter is scheduled. It will be scheduled for the 16th of August. So members will be on recess. That's all, Chairperson, for myself.
Okay. What do we need to do, Mr. Matonsi, is that in this term, there are decisions that were taken by the committee, and that will be coming immediately after when we come back. I will request that you track the decisions that the members of the committee have taken, and run them with the institution in terms of the progress report, both the IEC and the Home Affairs, and not including government printing works, so that we're able to follow track on the issues that are rising and the progress to that extent. So when we come back, we meet all the stakeholders, and even when they present their annual report or any other area that we were requesting, we are fully clear on the progress and the difficulties they're facing, so the committee is able to intervene, including this decision of the portfolio of the anti-corrupt unit that has been taken, that will need a fully report. So if the reports are ready, you send them to members of the committee. And also must follow up on the issue of the permits that we've been dealing with in the earlier on, I think in the first term. So that decision that of the permits that are investigated in somewhere in Northwest, which were issued in the mining area that either were issued illegally, we know about the we need that fully brief the issue, so that if the committee recess has to request to sit and deal with certain issues, members ready, and yourself and us who are ready on the program. So if we can do that, at least by end of or middle of this month of June, or early, late, or end of June, all progress issues we raise the committee decision. The reports must be sent back to you and circulate to members so that we are on par on the issues. I know it's going to be a long period for recess, given the elections that are there. We need to deal with that. The other point that we're going to also we must follow, obviously it will require us to come back at some point to get a brief by the IEC on the preparations of the elections. We are told that they've appointed a team that must assess the process of the election. So we may need to follow up, and so that members of the committee and parliament are on course on the issues. I'm aware that the team that's led by Judge Msenege, former Deputy Justice, has reported to another committee. But I think we must track on the issues that were raised by the committee. Thank you, Mr. Matonsi. Any comments, members, so that Mr. Matonsi at least familiarize on what he needs to assist us with? Any comment to that extent?
Yes, Chair. Agree.
Yeah, Honorable Mkine.
No, thank you very much, Chair, for that brief. I was just thinking now, Chair, that I'm sorry, just not to just show you the video. I wanted to check, man, because we went to the government printing works last week, and then we had to go there because we saw that there was a crisis. So I think that also it will be very proper that maybe in the next week or two we get an oversight report, so that we can see, what resolutions can we, look at the recommendations and all of that reflect in terms of the oversight that we were actually done. So I think that is the input on my side. I want that this oversight was just done, so that we don't leave it up until August, because we saw that there was instability there. So probably, I think, as you said, that maybe from time to time we'll be called in to come and interact with the report. We are ready. We've got the virtual, platform. I think that that oversight that we did last week was excellent. Was well done. So I think that let us get the report. Let us have a reflect on it, so that we don't have unforeseen chaos maybe when we come back and all of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mkini. Honorable Mkini, any comment? Another comment? Okay. I think we're fine. Mr. Matonsi, just run on that one. I think it's important that we get that also the report of government printing works. We'll interact with the chair, Advocate Bongo, and yourself, Mr. Matonsi, on the scheduling of the issues that we must deal with. And if we're to come back, I think you'll assist with the chairperson, so that we're able to deal with these issues of the committee. I want to take this opportunity to thank all members for your attendance for this meeting today, and hope that as we go for recess, we'll continue to conduct our work, oversight, and also in the work of Parliament. Thanks very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair.
Bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy recess.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys. I'll be stepping aside now.